It's now been over 4 months since Jack and Lilly Sullivan were reported missing from their home in rural Nova Scotia. As we detailed in prior episodes in this series, the children's mother and stepfather told police that when they awoke at about 10 a.m. on the morning of Friday, May 2nd, Jack and Lilly were gone. And since then, the case has twisted and turned in nearly every direction. Yet until this point, nothing's led back to Jack and Lilly. But we may be getting closer. In this episode, Madeleine Klein and I will continue to break down the updates and developments in this ever-evolving case. And just like in our last episode, perhaps even more so, this past week has been a game changer. The Nova Scotia courts unsealed 12 RCMP search and seizure warrant applications, which in turn provide us with a bird's eye view of many aspects of the police investigation. Who said what? How police vetted their statements, what information police chose to seize, and how they investigated 2 potential suspects, one of which raises some troubling questions. Additionally, this show received the results of its FOIPOP request for the internal communications regarding the large reward being offered by the Nova Scotia Justice Department in Jack and Lilly's case. And some of what we found is a bit revealing. So grab a drink, we got a lot to get into. Tonight, in this episode of Canadian Gothic, we'll again be asking, where are Jack and Lilly Sullivan?
You are listening to Canadian Gothic.
Released court documents show previously unreported details about 2 missing children in Nova Scotia. The documents say Lilly and Jack Sullivan were last seen at a local Dollarama with their mother and stepfather 1 day before they were reported missing. The paperwork also sheds more light on a pink blanket found in the search, saying family members located it in a tree. On May 4th, another piece of blanket was seized by police in a trash bag. Police confirmed both pieces were part of the same blanket.
Miss Madeleine Klein, we are back now for our 11th discussion surrounding the disappearance of Jack and Lilly Sullivan. And sadly, we're doing it almost to the day on the 4-month anniversary of the morning the children were reported missing. 4 months goes by fast. And in this case, a lot has happened in the 4 months, but especially a lot has happened in the last week. Before we get into all that, though, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm enjoying a cherry Slurpee. Did I need one? No. Did I get one? Yes.
You're probably coming down from reading a whole bunch of legal documents and search and seizure warrants related to Jack and Lilly's case. How is it to finally get a glimpse at the police investigation and kind of like, I guess, a behind the scenes look at this case? How did you feel going through that?
It's just so interesting reading through an official legal document like that. I'm so nosy because all of the redacted parts, there is not one redaction that I was like, I wonder what it says under there.
Yeah, I made a little game of trying to figure it out, but there is a lot.
Me too.
There is a lot to talk about in these documents. We'll get into it tonight, but before we get into the legal documents, one of the things we got to talk about at the end of our prior episode, when we discussed that Globe and Mail piece, we called out to listeners for feedback on which part of that article was the most eye-opening or game-changing, or which part of that article stuck with them the most after reading it or listening in on our discussion. And we got quite a bit of feedback. I want to play just a couple voicemails of listeners telling us what parts of the Globe and Mail article changed their opinion or opened their eyes the most. Let's hear some of that, and then we can start getting into this week's developments. The first bit of feedback we'll hear is from an anonymous listener who couldn't stop thinking about the financial situation the family was in and how that could have played into the disappearance.
The most eye-opening part of that article, the Globe and Mail piece, for me was definitely the financial situation and how the $1,900 check had been cut off. And thinking about the money that they would have gotten to take care of the kids seemed like a real reason why neither of them would do anything to the children, right? So that's what I was thinking kind of for the last few months. But knowing that the check had just been cut off because Daniel hadn't filed his taxes seems like that could be a real big spark for something to happen.
The idea that money being cut off, I don't think she was saying that was motivation to harm the kids, but simply that was almost like kicking the hornet's nest of a family that was already kind of in chaos.
Right. No, exactly. But I didn't really look at it from that perspective, but like $1,900, that's a lot of money, especially when you're already broke. Wouldn't that be reason enough to file your damn taxes?
That's what I'm thinking. If anything, it's a motivation to look after my kids, which I would be doing anyway, but certainly motivation to do my taxes on time or get them done.
Like, I get a lot less than that, and it's still motivation to file my
Yeah.
taxes.
Yeah, and even if your taxes were late, it sucks to have to call like the CRA, the Canadian Revenue Agency, and wait on hold and all that. But for that kind of money, I would sit on hold and deal with them and get whatever had to be done so that the baby bonus could continue. I don't think, I guess we won't understand why that wasn't done on time unless Daniel decides to speak out. But, certainly having that money cut off, even if only temporarily, is definitely caused some issues with the family, no doubt at all. Here's another bit of feedback I want to share. This is also from an anonymous listener who didn't leave their name. They have a theory on what could have happened or what may be at play in this case.
Honestly, the article didn't change much in my opinion, specifically about Daniel. I always found it weird how gung-ho he was about being in the media when their mother wasn't. I kind of always got the vibe of this is a guy who is covering his own ass for something. Now, I don't actually necessarily believe that he did anything to Lily or Jack. And this is what I feel is perhaps the issue with the entire case in general is I do feel that there is something that both of the parents that were in the home that day are trying to hide. I feel like them trying to hide some bad behavior, whether it be something that could get them in legal trouble or maybe just something that they think would make them look bad to the public, to me makes it more sense than them having actually done something, specifically on the fact that I do believe that they would have turned on each other by now, especially since they are no longer together. And I think that article kind of just highlights that. And I think what the article also does is more so just highlights how chaotic the home was and how easy it would have been for them to slip out.
Interesting comments.
Absolutely. Again, I never really thought from that perspective, but it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's uncommon because when there's a missing child or a missing persons case, the rest of the family, like I think one thing that would be valuable is to like hire like a PR person to deal with media and get statements out there and present us like an image of the missing person in a way that would encourage compassion from people out there. Not saying like hide their bad behavior and lie and whitewash it and all this stuff. But there are certainly cases I've come across where there's a bit more to the missing persons or their family's personal life that the family doesn't want out there for a good reason. And that reason being they don't want to change or affect public perception.
Every case, every single missing persons case. But what I do find really interesting is the contrast of Daniel and Malaya's like public presence. There's no way that the police didn't tell them both, don't talk to the media. Like, why would they tell Malaya to be quiet and tell Daniel to go gung-ho, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wonder if they were like, shut up, and that he just didn't.
I feel like that's probably a pretty good case because when we go through the legal documents that we're going to be talking about tonight, we will see that both of them cooperated with the police and spoke to the police on many occasions. She's just not on the news the way Daniel has been.
People think that if they're not being directly spoken to, it's not happening at all. It's very strange.
It is. I'm going to play one last bit of feedback and then we'll get into it here. This one's good because it really leads into the release of these documents. Here's Annie.
Following your last episode and the articles that came out, my opinion also has changed towards, the parents, or at least Daniel, to be guilty. However, in the last couple of days, some official case reports have been published in the press that seems to say that the RCMP is not really suspecting the parents, which is kind of a bit of a curveball. And I'm kind of starting to wonder, do you think that the RCMP, the authorities, are actually putting out, false information out there just to let, whoever is guilty in this case to kind of make them feel like caught them off guard, or have people kind of feel that they're not, that they're not being suspected and to kind of start talking? I'm not quite sure what to make of this latest thing. Thanks. Bye.
So Annie kind of spoils what we're going to be talking about, but these legal documents that were released over the past week or so, and I have full copies of them, as well as I think I have some documents that the media didn't even get because I did my own Freedom of Information Act request related to this case that we'll talk about. But what Annie is saying is that the release of these documents over the past week seem to imply that the family isn't suspected of being involved in anything. Could the RCMP be putting it out there, be putting that out there as a smokescreen to get someone to slip up? Give me your thoughts and I'll tell you mine.
I don't want to sound stupid, but I know that they do that in Criminal Minds. So, I mean, why not in real life police work, right? I mean, if it works on the show, it's got to work in real life.
I'm turning off my own podcast after hearing that. Here's my thought on it. I think if the RCMP was going to spin anything, it would be in like press releases or official statements or something like that. What we got over the last week isn't something that's intended to be released to the public. What we received is the search and seizure warrants, which is the application for a search or seizure warrant. What they are is the police officers making a case to a judge saying, like, this is what we know, this is what we did, this is what we found out, this is what we want access to, and this is why. So it's not like we're seeing this massaged statement from the RCMP. What we're basically seeing is their math, or what they have done to justify their search warrant. So my response to what Annie said is like, no, I don't think this is something that the police put out there. We're just now getting a bird's eye view of what they've done so far, with heavy redactions, of course.
Right. Well, and I'm wondering, because you need a warrant to obtain these, but I feel like both Daniel and Malaya voluntarily gave up their phones and bank records and everything. I wonder if they still need a warrant to make them admissible in court if they need it to be.
Yeah, it seems so. And we'll go through, before we start getting into the individual warrants.
And there are a lot more warrants than just Daniel and Malaya's stuff. They get warrants for more than that.
Yeah, there is there's actually 12 warrants in total, and we'll get into them. But I will say the information contained in these applications will give us what is clearly the most revealing look into the investigation that we've seen yet. We're going to get details on the many statements made to police by people close to the case. We will see the extensive police work being done to double check seemingly every statement made to them. And I think we may get our first look at a possible suspect in the case. There's a lot to get into, so let's just take a quick break now, and when we get back, we'll start looking at the documents. So let's get into the search warrant applications, which were just unsealed by the judge over the past week. I have them all here. There are 12 in total. They average from 40 to 60-ish pages in length, but they do repeat themselves. Many things, for example, like the parents' statements made to police, on the day of the disappearance, that's going to be in like all of these, but each one of the applications seems to have like one or two new pieces of information. So I spent the last couple days just looking for every bit of unique information within these, and there is a whole bunch of stuff, including a lot of things that, like, the media has covered this, but they missed a lot of interesting parts, a lot of interesting points in the documents. To introduce the 12 applications, let me just tell you what the police successfully searched and seized, because all of these warrants were successful. The first one, on May 16th, was an application to search and seize both Daniel and Malaya's phones. So you mentioned there that Daniel and Malaya were said to have willingly given up the phones. It seems at the time of this application, the police had access to the phones and were getting like digital copies of them made, and were applying to go through that. So they did have custody of the phone when they successfully got this application. The second application was the police looking for CCTV footage from the kids' bus, the bus that took them to and from school, looking at video of both the morning and the afternoon rides. The next three applications were done on May 23rd. And this one's interesting because the target of the applications, like what the police wanted access to, was redacted. Usually a redaction is going to be to protect the personal information from being released. So I don't know what this is. And I went through reading all three of the applications, trying to look for context of what they could be asking for. and successfully got, but I couldn't make heads or tails of what these 3 applications could be for.
Yeah, I don't know. And like I noticed some redactions you can kind of fill in the blank and it seems
Mhm.
like not like super important information. Like I know like like times were redacted. And I'm like that doesn't really seem
Or,
like
or
it needs to be redacted. So I'm
or maybe
wondering
someone,
like
yeah, or maybe someone's name, but you could get based on the context in the sentence. You're like, oh, they're talking about, Malaya's mom, or, whatever the case may be.
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, with this I couldn't even guess.
Yeah.
I'm just
My
like what?
if I had to guess, I'm thinking it may have something to do with like child protection, child services sort of thing, because I saw no
Oh,
mention of that through the documents, and it would make sense that they would be that the police would want copies of all those reports related to,
I'll bet you're
yeah,
right.
and since the target was completely redacted, that'd be my guess, but I don't know. The next thing is this is an interesting one. Is on May 28th, the police successfully obtained a warrant to get video records of all the cars going through the Cobequid Pass. People in Nova Scotia know what that is, but for people who don't, there is one main road that connects Nova Scotia to the rest of the world. It's called the Cobequid Pass. It's the Nova Scotia-New Brunswick border. And if you want to leave Nova Scotia to go to the US or other parts of other parts of Canada, you cross the Cobequid Pass. They successfully got days before, I think like a week before the children's disappearance, up to like 4 or 5 days after, video of all the cars passing the Cobequid Pass, which gives them a tremendous amount of information. The next 3 warrants that were approved all related to banking information. One was Malaya's bank account, one was Daniel's bank account, and another one was Daniel's investment account, which turns out, like, remember we talked last week how he was getting into investments? Apparently,
And we were like, no, you're not.
yeah, apparently he has an account with a bank that seems to specialize in investments. So he must have had something, and the police have copies of it all. 2 left. The next one, the 11th warrant, this one was done July 4th. So well after the children disappeared, and it's for Malaya's Text Plus account. Text Plus is like an app on your phone that you can send texts and call through Wi-Fi. Apparently she used it because where they lived was like a cellular dead zone. So she was using this Text Plus account. Not long after the kids went missing, she deleted the app from her phone because she said she didn't need it anymore, probably because she wasn't living out in the middle of nowhere. She was back with her family. But the police got a
Right.
warrant to get all of the records from her Text Plus account.
Well, that's good they can do that because I always thought that third-party apps, all the messages were like, I don't know if encrypted is the right word, but I thought that you really couldn't access that information, especially after it's been deleted.
Yeah, well, hopefully they have it
Yeah.
all. And the last thing, this is an interesting one. The most recent warrant they successfully applied for was to access information on a thumb drive at the police station that contained CCTV footage shot at redacted. So it didn't say the location of this. And now we can talk this one out a little bit. Again, I tried to find context of what CCTV footage that they wanted. And I'm going through parts of the application, and so many places aren't redacted. Like, all the places they were leading up to the disappearance of the children, like the Dollarama and the gas station. It says the name and addresses of all those. So I don't know why this was redacted. The only thing I could think of with this thumb drive containing CCTV footage is what I didn't hear mentioned is a prior episode, we talked about the woman in the news who lived quite a ways away, and the police came to her house and got all the video footage from her trail cams and stuff. I'm assuming that was just put on a thumb drive, and it would make sense that thumb drive was in the custody of the police. That's my only theory as to what this could be, but whatever it was, the police have access to it.
It was either that or the footage from the day before that they obtained from like the mall they were at or wherever.
I thought about that, but when you read through the applications, all the different stores that they were in, it says the names of the stores. So why in this would they redact just the location?
Yeah, that's
The only
true.
like kind of locations that seemed to be redacted was like addresses of people close to the case, but they wouldn't have CCTV footage at like a private residence.
Right.
So I don't know what this could be, but all that to say is, of the 12 warrants that were successfully applied for. There's really 4 of them we don't know about. 3 are complete mysteries because the full target's redacted. And then the last one, it's CCTV footage from somewhere we don't know that was on a thumb drive at the police station. But that is what we're going to be talking about, is the justification for these search warrants. But before we get into what to me was like kind of the most revealing parts of the applications, I just want to come right at this. You and I have been mildly critical of the police, I think, in this case, but not like the public. You see so much, the police need to do their job. They need to bring in a different police force. I'll say right now, after reading what the police have done in this case, is they have, like, the police work being done here, they have interviewed everyone and double and triple checked seemingly everything they said. If Daniel said on 2 days before the children went missing, we went to Dollarama, the police will get CCTV footage from Dollarama. They'll go through Daniel's bank account to find the receipt or the charges from his thing at Dollarama. Like they're double and triple checking everything. And what has come out in the media about the release of these documents is that the police don't seem to be suspecting that the parents were involved. And the reason for that is every bit of their story has, like, it checks out. The cops have gone through everything. They have, fortunately, Daniel and Malaya both had the GPS turned on their phones. So not only, like, if they say we were at Dollarama and we got home at 6, again, they'll have the video footage at Dollarama of them there. They have video footage from some other place of their car going past, the bank statements, and then on their phone they have the GPS data showing where they were and when they got home. So it's like it all checks out from the parents' point of view.
Yes, everything lines up. Both their stories, neither of them have changed at all. And yeah, like there seems to be no evidence of deception whatsoever, which last episode I said, like, that, this really changes my opinion of Daniel and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, after reading these, now my opinion's changed again. And I'm just like, am I just like easily tricked?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand. Like, I have never come across a case where my opinion and feeling have changed so rapidly.
Yeah. I think if Malaya and Daniel did anything to those kids, they are like some of the best criminals ever, because the amount of scrutiny their statements and video, banking records, all this stuff has been put through. I don't know how they possibly could get away with it. Let's go through some of the information in these applications that I think was most interesting. And since we just talked about Daniel and some of the statements they made, I want to start with 2 pieces of information that I'm just going to call family weirdness. These are just 2 things that stood out to me that I haven't really seen anyone else talking about, but I thought they were interesting and of note for our discussion tonight. The first one has to do with Daniel's mother, Janie. Of course, she lives in like the RV in the backyard. She is one of the key moments in the timeline because when the children are in the backyard before they went missing, while Daniel and Malaya were still in bed, it's Janie who says, I heard them and I was, dozing off with my dog. I didn't think anything of it. But what I didn't realize is that she had 2 kind of versions of it. I'm going to read you a little bit from the report. And you'll see what I mean about Janie's slightly shifting timeline. Just to set the scene here, Janie gets up in the morning, she pours a tea, she goes outside for a cigarette, feeds her chickens. The kids aren't outside. She goes in her house and starts dozing off in bed on her phone, and that's when she hears the kids playing. She gets a call from her brother, Ron, at about 8:48 a.m., and they talked about going into town. Ron called her to invite her into town, and this is something we talked about before. After she was done talking to him, she said, no, I don't want to go into town right now. I'm tired. She got off her phone and went back to bed, continues like scrolling on her phone and dozing in and out. Originally, when she first spoke to the police, she told the police that she knew the children were missing before Ron called. In a second statement, she said, actually, it was after my brother called. And I don't know if that's a big deal, but I just thought it was interesting that in her mind she couldn't remember, did they go missing before or after I had that phone call from my brother? Because I'm just thinking in the midst of the kids are missing, that phone call would have been very different, and my memory of that phone call would have been very different.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, didn't she also call him after she found out the kids were missing?
I think it was like an hour or 2 hours later, either he called her or she called him back or something. So
Maybe
maybe
that's where the mix-up's coming from, but yeah, I don't know.
it could be. And there's something like about her and her statements anyway, because if you recall, she gave a polygraph. I think we talked about this before. She gave a polygraph, but the results of the polygraph were inconclusive because she had inappropriate physiology to be tested. Was that something we talked about?
No.
Okay, this came up in the yes. This is another thing. I'm mixing up what was in the documents and what was in the Globe and Mail article. Janny was one of the people who got a polygraph. Everyone else who got polygraphs, it will say whether they passed or failed. But with Janny's, Daniel's mother, it said they couldn't make a determination because she didn't have appropriate physiology for the test to be accurate. And I started reading like what would be inappropriate physiology that would make someone not able to be tested. And some could be like kind of like mental defect or people who are really high strung. The tests just don't really work. And if you recall, when we listened to Janny on CBC, we were both like, she's pretty intense. So I wonder if that's just their way of saying like, she's intense and I don't know if this test is going to be accurate with her.
I bet you it's something like that. They're like, Janie, decaf today.
Do you think your son had anything to do with the disappearance of Jack and Lilly?
No, I don't believe Daniel had anything to do with the disappearance of Jack and Lilly. Our heart don't lie, and my heart is telling me that my kid did not have nothing to do with this, and I had nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, her polygraph ended up being inconclusive. But anyway, I just brought that up because I thought it was interesting that her timeline shifted ever so slightly. And the reason I'm so interested is because a part of our determination or looking at the window of when these kids went missing, Janny's time taking that call from her brother is a big part of that, whether the kids were missing before or she heard the kids before or after that. The next little bit of family weirdness that came up is when you compare Daniel and Malaya's statements against each other's, there's one piece of information that really doesn't jive between the two, and it involves the night before the children went missing. Malaya's version of that night was that she went to bed a little bit early, but Daniel stayed up later. She doesn't know what he was supposed to clean the house. He said, I'm going to stay up and clean up for you so you don't have to tomorrow. He stayed up later than her, but when she woke up in the morning, the house wasn't cleaned, so she doesn't know what he was doing. When you read Daniel's statements, he says he went to bed early. The police never really come back to like, when did you go to bed? What was it? But it's just interesting that when you look at the night before, it seems like they're not agreeing on when he went to bed.
This would be the only discrepancy in their stories. But I mean, is early to bed subjective?
Yeah, I think it would be, as well as if early to bed for him is maybe different from her, keeping in mind that they have a baby in the house and stuff. And right. I'm trying not to read too much into it, but the police don't go back and like drill down on that point. And I would think that they would have access to, phone records to see if he was up doing whatever. He probably was on his phone at some point of it. So they probably have a pretty good idea of when he at least stopped using his phone or something. But the warrant applications don't really give the result of their analysis of the information they've obtained. They're just showing their justification to get it. So things like getting access to his phone records would maybe answer these questions.
Well, and every other part of their story lines up. Like the next morning, they both heard the kids. Lily poked her head into the bedroom a couple times. Daniel's mom heard the kids. So it's not like there was radio silence from the kids from the night before. So maybe that's why they're like, oh, well, we know they were up and playing at one point in the morning. Yeah. So nothing happened the night before.
Yeah, there's really like through these applications, we get to read their statements about, the Wednesday and Thursday before the disappearance of the children. And there's really not anything there's really nothing interesting in there. We hear the same justification we heard for the children not being there as we heard Lily has a cough, or they both had a cough, so she kept them home. They didn't really do anything special. They went to a couple stores like Dollarama and a gas station and a Tim Hortons, visited Malaya's family to do laundry at one point. But the police have double checked all this with the CCTV footage and such. So it's, there's really no mystery about the days leading up to it. Malaya and Daniel both agree on the children were in bed when we went to sleep. We heard / in Daniel's case, saw them in the morning playing or heard them in the other room. Janny says, I heard them in the backyard at one point, and then they just disappear seemingly between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. So within that hour window, and every bit of information that came out through these search warrant applications, looking at the interviews with everybody involved in this, that seems to be the moment, that 1 hour window. And maybe that is the reason why the parents don't seem to be suspected. They both agree they were in bed together at 10 a.m. Between 9 and 10 a.m. And, and Janny heard them outside.
Yeah, it's just, this is such a wild case because there's no explanation. There's no smoking gun in these, warrant to obtain records. There's stories are lining up. All footage that could be reviewed has been reviewed. Every car has been scrutinized that drove through Lansdowne Station. Mm-hmm. They're not in the woods that we can find. Mm-hmm. It's so bizarre. Where did these kids go?
Yeah. Well, we do get some questions answered, or at least clarified quite a bit. Let's start by talking about the boot print. This is something we've talked about a lot. During the search for the children, you just mentioned the search there, there's really only two things that they discovered. One is said to be a piece of a blanket. Another is said to be what was thought to be a child's boot print. We learned a lot about the boot print and the blanket in these warrant applications. Let me read you about the boot print, and this will give a bit of insight as well on the scope and the depth of the police work being done here. So I'm just going to read from the documents. So between May 3rd and May 27th, investigators worked to determine whether a boot print found on the pipeline trail in the search area belonged to Lily. On May 3rd, an RCMP officer requested forensic identification services to make a cast of the print. Later in May, another RCMP officer advised that the cast had shown the number 29 in the tread and questioned whether this number could relate to the boot's size or just be a design element. To clarify, the RCMP officer examined the same style of boots at Walmart and confirmed that the number shown in the tread varied by size. Size 11 boots had the number 29, size 12 had a number 30, and size 10 showed number 27. Malaya initially believed Lily wore a size 12 or 13, and because of that, this would be inconsistent with the print. However, on May 27th, an RCMP officer reviewed Walmart transaction records that were provided by Malaya and confirmed that on March 20th, she had purchased a pair of rainbow boots for Lily in size 11. Investigators then concluded that Lily's boots were the size 11, making them consistent with the boot print found on the pipeline trail.
Wild.
Did you follow that? It is wild, but it's like to go to that extent. And I think what the number is when I looked it up, it seems to be the UK size.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, so it seems like when they did a cast of this boot print, all they could really make out was a little bit of the tread, and then embedded in the plastic or the rubber sole or whatever was the UK size. And despite them thinking like, yeah, that wouldn't match up with Lily's size, when they went through the records months earlier, that was what she bought. It's pretty interesting.
So which trail was this on again? Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, this is the Pipeline Trail, which is a trail in the woods behind the children's home, about 1 kilometer away. And this trail is, if you follow this trail, it would lead past the home that the police went to and got all the trail cam footage from.
Right.
So that's kind of the connection there.
The only thing that's always kind of bugged me about this boot print is Lily lived there. Why wouldn't her boot print be around? Like it should be there.
It's a good distance away. It wouldn't make sense for Lily to walk that far away. That said, these boots are boots that were bought at Walmart, so it'd be a pretty generic style. But it is interesting that a boot print matching her size was found,
Right.
a roughly a kilometer behind the house. That said, the police would have a better idea of the ground. Like if the ground was muddy, it would kind of imply that it was a recent print.
Yeah.
If it was this dried, print, maybe it's been there for a few weeks.
Also give them a direction of wherever this boot wearer was going.
Yeah. But either way, it's like they've applied this kind of depth of analysis to seemingly everything else they came across. Let's read about the blanket. So we know a bit more about the boot. Let's learn a bit more about the blanket. For people who have been following us, we've mentioned this blanket quite a bit. In the Globe and Mail article, it came out that the blanket was thrown away days prior and was thought to be, according to Daniel, stolen from his garbage. We can learn a bit more about it here. On May 2nd, family members assisting in the search for Jack and Lilly discovered a pink blanket in the woods off Lansdowne Station Road. At around 4 p.m., they informed police officers who were at the children's residence that they had found the blanket in a tree. When shown a photo, Malaya and Daniel suspected it belonged to Lily. Officers accompanied the group back to the location and seized the blanket. A police dog searched approximately 1 kilometer along a nearby trail, but no scent was detected. On May 4th, RCMP seized another piece of the same blanket from a trash bag at Daniel and Malaya's home. Malaya explained that Lily once had an LOL doll blanket, which she often carried around with her and had used for sleeping before receiving a proper bed set. When Lily no longer wanted it, Daniel used the blanket to block a draft from a poorly installed door, eventually tearing off a piece to make it fit. About a week before the children went missing, as the weather improved, Malaya removed the blanket from the door and threw it in the garbage. She noted that by then, a section of the blanket was already missing. So that kind of explains why the blanket is ripped. He was using her old blanket to seal a draft in the door. He had ripped a piece of it off to make it fit. Doesn't explain why that piece was found up in the woods in a tree.
Right.
But it at least makes a bit more sense to me.
A bit. But yeah, how did it end up in the woods and why?
And then like when he ripped it up, he ripped a piece off the blanket to make it fit so it could seal up that hole or whatever. When was that? I'm guessing before the winter or during the winter. Why did that piece get up in the woods? And also, did it look like the piece was there for a while? That's what I would like to know. If it's been there all winter, it's going to look different than the one that was propped in the window. It'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, it would be. I wonder if this will come up again and be more important to the case. I don't know.
I think it will. Daniel's already mentioned someone also may have stolen some of his sweaters out of the garbage. So to me, this all seems connected.
It's gotta be. I hope it is.
I think the bombshell's about to come up though. Let's take our final break of this night. Let's take our final break of this episode. And when we get back, we're going to hear about, I guess we can say, 2 suspects. One of them seems to be ruled out, and the other one has been in my head since I've gone through these documents, and I haven't seen this discussed elsewhere. But to me, if there is a smoking gun, it's this. We'll talk about it after this break. So if you're reading these applications and you're looking for where the children are, you're not going to get that answer. The police clearly don't know. If you're looking for who's responsible for the children's disappearance, there seems to really be 2 suspects that are put out there. The first one is going to be no surprise to anyone. I think we've spoke about this in our prior episode as well, is the night the children went missing, Malaya phoned the police to say she believed that the children's biological father, Cody Sullivan, may have taken them. I'm going to read a little bit about that because this is pretty interesting, and it's not just Malaya who was saying that Cody may have had something to do with this. Listen to this. Shortly after midnight, the RCMP received a call from Malaya who expressed concern that Cody may have the children. She admitted she had no proof and described it more as a gut feeling, but she asked that the police please consider the possibility. She also speculated that Cody may have taken the children to New Brunswick, although she acknowledged that Cody didn't know where she or the children were living. At approximately 2:50 a.m. that same morning, an officer met with Cody at his residence. Cody told police he hadn't seen Jack or Lily in 3 years and confirmed that the children were not with him. On May 7th, so like 3 or 4 days later, a tip was received that Cody was seen with the children by a hotel employee in New Brunswick. An officer again visited Cody a second time and obtained photographs of him and his vehicles. So just to talk this out, when we heard from Cody's mom, and we talked about this in a prior episode, she described the police showing up in the middle of the night, knocking on the door, talking to her and Cody.
It was around between 3 and 3:30 in the morning. A couple of cop cars pull into the driveway. The lights wake me up that I'm a fairly light sleeper, so I see the cars pull in, so I knew what it was. So they come inside. They only stood in the kitchen. They wanted me to wake Cody up, and they wanted to know when was the last time he had seen the kids, and that they were just making sure that the kids weren't here. And then they left.
So that is in response to Malaya calling the night the children went missing and saying, I think he did it. I think he went to New Brunswick with them. They went, they talked to Cody. He was there. He didn't have the kids, whatever. It seems that they left, but then they got an anonymous tip from an employee at a hotel in New Brunswick. And that's what led them back the second time to take photos and ask questions again. Because we've heard about both of these interactions from Cody's mom, Melinda's point of view. But now we're hearing what prompted it from the police.
Well, and because police did end up going to this hotel that this employee reported seeing him at. So, I've yet to see a photo of this guy. So, did they just see someone that looks like him and they happen to know him also? Because they went and they looked at the records and there's no Cody Sullivan anywhere on the computer.
Yeah, they found no booking in his name, seemingly no video proof he was there. They also have the video footage of all the vehicles going through the Cobequid Pass. So if Cody did take the kids in a vehicle known to him, that would have been flagged as well. But all that to say, and all that seems like almost overkill, because the police also found him at his house both times that they went there.
Right. Yeah, very, very strange.
It is really strange, but I think I don't see how he could have done that. And I think it would have been sometime after the second meeting with them that the police told either his mom, Belinda, or him, or Cody himself that, we're not looking your way.
Right.
A couple of days ago, they had contact, and they told him that they weren't looking his way anymore, that everything was fine.
They did their police work, looking at video and all this other stuff, and it seems that they didn't find proof that he was there or evidence that he was there, and maybe it was just someone who looked like Cody with two kids.
Right.
The next possible suspect of everything that I read in these documents, this is the one thing that made me go, holy shit. If this is true, this is who did it. And now I will say, you and I both know the police received hundreds of tips related to this case. Every press release from the RCMP seems to, the numbers continuing to raise for the number of tips that they've received.
In a statement to Global News Thursday, RCMP say intensive investigative work is ongoing in relation to the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan, and tips continue to be received. We now have over 700.
I can only think of 2 of those tips that actually made it in the search warrant applications. One was from that hotel employee who thought they saw Cody. Another one is this one. Listen to this. On the morning of May 2nd, 2025, between 9:30 a.m. and 10 a.m., so again, we're talking about the morning the kids went missing, exactly in the time frame that they went missing. It has her name, I'm not going to say it, but on the morning of May 2nd at between 9:30 and 10, this person was driving her sons in the Lansdowne area when she observed 2 children walking along Garlick Road towards Westville. She described a girl that was approximately 9 to 10 years old with dark hair and pigtails, wearing a tank top with blue straps, holding the hand of a younger boy who was about 5 years old with dirty blonde hair and wearing shorts. Slightly ahead of the children, this woman reported seeing a woman estimated to be between 50 and 60 years old, Caucasian, with loose curly hair, dressed in a white shirt and blue shorts. The woman was standing beside an older model, light gold or tan sedan, which had its rear passenger door open and appeared to be watching the children walk in her direction. When later meeting police at the intersection of Garlick Road and Lansdowne Station Road, the tipster who called this in indicated that the children had been walking northbound between the train tracks and the intersection, and the vehicle was parked on the gravel shoulder at the Lansdowne Station Road and Garlick Road intersection. So to me, it's like, if that is accurate, I don't know. Like, is that who did it?
And it's just like the timing. So, like, perfect date, perfect time. Remember, this was a Friday. So, most kids should be in school. And we're talking about Lansdowne Station. Like, there's how many kids are there?
Let alone a female that's 9 to 10 with holding the hand of a younger boy. Like, it totally matches. And it makes sense why this tip made its way into the search warrant applications, because I think they're taking this pretty seriously.
I hope so. And I mean, at that point, no one knew these kids were missing. So the person that saw this and is reporting it, I mean, she didn't get a good look, and I mean, she's got a pretty good description of what she saw, but at that point there was really no reason to like mentally note really maybe how old she looks. Or
yeah, I would wonder what led to her even remembering anything.
Maybe because whenever I'm like driving and school is supposed to be in and I see a kid, I'm like, why aren't you in school? That's always what I wonder.
Yeah. But I just think this tip, it lines up in so many ways. There can't be a lot of kids walking around. Most kids in that area would either be driven to school or get a bus to school. This is between 9:30 and 10. School would have already been in session. The bus long since would have passed. To give a sense of that, we talked in our last episode about, I said, is it weird that Malaya marked the children off absent at like something like 6:30 in the morning or something, or 6:15 in the morning? I've learned through these documents, the reason she did that is she had an alarm set for 6:15, because that's when she got up to get the kids ready to get them to their bus in time. The bus picked them up at like, I think it was like 7 o'clock or something like that. When her alarm went off, time to get the kids ready, she then went on like an app and marked the kids absent and went back to sleep.
Right.
So that makes sense. But all that to say, whatever bus takes Jack and Lily should have been taking these two kids too.
Well, exactly.
2 hours later, are they out? Yeah, I think if you're someone who believes this was a random abduction, this would be my main suspect.
Me as well. Well, and like, I'm at the point where we've exhausted all other avenues. Nothing seems to make sense. And this is also, they were walking on the road that, I'm not sure how long it is, but like, what is it called? The
Garlick Road.
That's the road their house is on, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. This would have been pretty close to the children's home.
Exactly. So it kind of all makes sense. But that being said, so where are they? Who was the woman?
That's right.
And why hasn't this tan or champagne colored sedan been seen on any footage that I mean, maybe it has and they just haven't stated that yet. But
well, if anyone close to these children have like a gold or tan sedan, I'm sure they got some extra questioning.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
and I bet you if any gold or tan sedans passed the Cobequid Pass, the police probably took note of those license plates and made some calls.
For sure they did.
But
so hopefully that's in the works behind the scenes, and they're just trying to get something concrete. But this is the only thing thus far that really makes sense and has any like merit to it, I guess.
I think so. But it's what we're like throughout these documents, we're really getting a look at the very beginnings of the investigation. We see the interviews with everybody involved, what they had to say. We see the police kind of confirming details of their timeline using security footage, statements from people who, ran into them in the parking lot of the Dollarama as an example. But all these things that the police would have gotten access to through these successful warrants is kind of like the next stage of the investigation. So again, they're now able to go through their phones and confirm GPS data, who they were texting, what websites they were visiting or apps they were using. They have security video in the children's bus. I don't know what that would tell you. They have all those redacted warrants, whatever they were for. They have video records from the Cobequid Pass showing which vehicles left the province. We have banking information for Malaya and Daniel. We have Malaya's Text Plus account. And then we have whatever the heck was on that thumb drive at the police station. So whatever the next stage of the investigation it is, it's going to come from all that stuff. And I don't know if we're going to get access to any of that unless the police begin to apply for more warrants.
I'd love to know what's happening behind the scenes, because you can rest assured that something is happening. The kids didn't just vanish. So they have to have something. At this point, we're 4 months in. They have to have some sort of lead or idea. It doesn't make sense for them not to have anything, especially like it's 2025. There's cameras everywhere.
Yeah, it's a come on. But in reading this, my thought that Malaya or Daniel or both of them were involved, I don't see how that's possible, because the scrutiny every bit of their stories have been under by the RCMP. I think they would have got them by now. Before we wrap it up here, one other thing I want to talk to you about. I said there was another FOIPOP request that I did that I don't think anyone else has, and it's not going to reveal any, or maybe it will reveal some information. You remember when we talked about the children's disappearance being added to the rewards for major unsolved crimes in Nova Scotia? The children's case was added it ended with like this thing that said, anyone with information related to this crime, contact us at blah, blah, blah. Shortly after, they changed the wording and republished it, where it removed the word crime. And you and I thought, like, what is it? Is it a crime or isn't it? I did a FOIPOP request for all the information related to the children's case being added to the program and for the wording being changed after the fact. And the way a FOIPOP request works is, like, I think it's 80 pages of all the emails between the police and the Department of Justice, coming up with the wording and getting it posted. What they had said happened is what appears to have happened is that they used the kind of a template, and they just added Lily and Jack's details in, and the template adds with anyone with information about this crime. It wasn't until it actually got posted online that someone had realized the mistake, and that's when they decided to change the wording. So not a big deal there, but if there was a smoking gun in that document, there's a statement made by the superintendent of the police who is writing to the Department of Justice asking for Lily and Jack's case to be prioritized and a reward be offered like as soon as possible. The way they described the need for that was interesting. I'll read it to you. In the email from the chief superintendent of the RCMP requesting the Department of Justice add the case to the major rewards for unsolved crimes program, he used these words to describe the investigation. The Major Crimes Unit believes there are people who are privy to information that may result in locating Jack and Lily. So it's not a big thing, but the fact that he says, like, up until this point, it's always been the children wandered off somewhere up behind the house. But what the chief superintendent of the RCMP said is that their Major Crimes Unit believe that there are people privy to information that may result in locating Jack and Lily. Hence, a $125,000 reward may get them to spill the beans. So again, it's just a little look at behind the curtain.
Yeah, and that tells me that they've got something going on. And like I've stated many, many times before, they don't have to tell us everything. We're not entitled to know everything they find out as they find it out. And
something like this is something they wouldn't tell us. And at the very beginning of this episode, when we were listening to the people providing feedback on our prior episode, we heard, like, could the RCMP be intentionally, putting fake info out or misleading us? I don't think they would do that, but they may intentionally not be telling the public that the Major Crimes Unit believes that there are people out there who know what happened. I think this is kind of the strategic communication, not like putting out fake info, but hiding these facts for whatever reason.
Yeah, just like conveniently leaving stuff out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I hope so, because it's been 4 months, and I feel like we're nowhere closer than we were May 3rd.
I feel we're a bit closer. The big difference, I think, is that criticism of the RCMP, people may want to read these documents before they are like, we should bring in, the Scotland Yard from England. Before people are too hard on the RCMP aren't doing anything, they need to talk to the mother. they need to see what the RCMP have done so far, because like I feel like in reading through this, they've done what I would consider good police work, and it has all gone nowhere.
Right. Like no one is quicker to criticize police than I. I know that. But credit where credit is due. This police work has been spectacular.
According to these applications, they've tried everything and double, triple checked everything. So yeah, I can't criticize that. Another thing that I think has changed since the beginning is it's harder to be like, something happened the night before and Daniel and Malaya are covering it up. Daniel and Malaya seem to be on the same page. Janny's statements back that up. The information from their phones, people who encounter them in the parking lot, their banking information all seems to match their story. So,
well, and like you've said before, their relationship deteriorated at an alarming rate after the kids went missing. They would have turned on each other by now.
Mm-hmm.
If either or had anything to do with the disappearance of Jack and Lilly, they would have sold each other out by now.
One other thing that did come up in the documents related to their breakdown is I think we get to learn a little bit about, through the documents, through their statements, a little bit about the actual situation with her leaving suddenly with her mom. It seemed like during the search, there was going to be a question of where the baby should go, Meadow. Malaya wanted Meadow to go with her mother, with Malaya's mother. It seemed like Daniel wanted Meadow to stay home. A disagreement about that is what led to Malaya and Meadow getting in the car with Malaya's mom and leaving. So that seems to be perhaps an act of her trying to protect her baby from something. All this to say, whatever it is, Daniel and Malaya, looking at these statements, they haven't been in touch with each other and they don't seem to be on good terms. If any one of them knew something incriminating about the other, I think they would have come forward.
Absolutely. Especially Daniel, because he probably wants his baby back.
Absolutely.
So he'd say anything to get Meadow back.
I think we've gone through a lot tonight. We've jammed this information. I was thinking, like, should we spread it over 2 episodes or jam it into one? We've decided to jam it into one. There's a lot more in these documents that we could discuss. And maybe in our next episode, we'll pull a few more pieces of information out of it. But if, like we did at the beginning of this episode, if anyone out there has any thoughts or questions or reactions to information from these documents or anything we discussed tonight, click on the link in this episode description and send us a voicemail, and we'll include it in the next episode. And I'm sure there will be one, because we've had some busy weeks, some slow weeks, but the last 2 episodes have just been jammed with information. It's hard to keep up at this point.
I've said this at the end of many other episodes, but maybe the next one will be our last.
Fingers crossed.
They've got to be close, and they're just keeping it under wraps. They've got to be. Kids don't just vanish.
Yeah, 4 months though, that's a long time, and it's not going to be long before we're saying it's been half a year. So yeah, I hope the next one is the last, because this is, it can't go on, and that's why this case has so much attention. Is society will not accept 2 children vanishing off the face of the earth.
No,
nor should they.
I think that's why the police haven't fumbled this one. As soon as it happened, they were like, okay, like, we can't, due to our history, and this is like involving a 4 and a 6-year-old, we have to figure this one out.
I want to thank you for joining us tonight. But before I end the episode, I want to send positive vibes to everyone affected by this case. And I also want to call out to anyone close to the case to reach out to me. I'd be happy to add your voice to the show if you care to speak with us. Now, with all that said, I'm going to start wrapping up this episode, but before I do, let me end with some thanks. First, a big thanks to Madeleine for joining us for this episode. A thanks to Monty Data, who contributes the music for this show, and Linz from the Dystopian Simulation podcast, who provides our intro and outro voiceovers. And then lastly, but most importantly, a massive thank you goes out to each and every one of you listening, as without your interest and your support, this show would be as pointless as it would be impossible. And on the topic of support, let me thank the newest subscribers to the premium feed. Betsy, Wrestle Guy, and Eva, we appreciate you. And for anyone else who'd like to support the show, you can do it in a variety of ways. First of all, a premium feed subscription costs just a couple bucks a month, and that money will fund the creation of new episodes. But the premium feed will also give you those episodes 2 days early, give them to you ad-free, and give you access to a full back catalog of episodes. If that sounds like something you're interested in, you can go premium right now at nighttimepodcast.com/subscribe. And even if you don't want to go premium, you can still support the show by sharing this episode on social media and letting all your like-minded friends know why they should listen. Your support is very much appreciated. So until next time, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let me know if you see anything weird.
Thank you for listening to Canadian Gothic.
This stuck with me a little bit. I think a couple episodes ago, somebody said something about like, well, if they drowned, like it would have made more sense. Like if it was one of them and they drowned, that would have made sense. But what about both of them? This is anecdotal experience, but at least where I am from, it is very well understood that siblings will actually drown together, especially if you have a younger sibling and an older sibling dynamic there, like with a couple years that make the older sibling feel more protective. Jack is in that still in that danger zone of drowning at 4 years old, and I could see a situation in which maybe Jack fell into a body of water and Lily tried to save him and then ended up drowning herself. Kids, for whatever reason, even if they don't know how to swim themselves, we do know that they display this behavior. This has happened multiple times.
And one thing that really stood out to me in that article was the fact that he randomly brought up that 2 of his sweaters were missing. What does that have to do with the fact that Lily and Jack are missing? I don't get it, but that's one thing that really stood out to me, why he would bring that up.
Hi, you guys. I really, really enjoyed the last episode of Where Are Lily and Jack with the Globe and Mail article. You covered it so well. It's such an amazing, horrible story. I'm a grandmother of 10, and it's just too much. Anyway, you guys do a wonderful job. Really appreciate you. It's really so sad and insane. I hope and pray for the family and the little guys, but, you know, who knows at this stage. Thank you guys so much for bringing this awareness to everyone. Like I said, it's really hard to find information on these little people.